Welcome. My name is Dr. Jose Fernandez. I'm an integrative physician from Kissimmee, Florida. In our first series of these webinars, I shared with you the story of how Whole Life MD came to be and why I decided to develop the Whole Life MD store. Today, I'm going to share with you the 5 pillars of health. Many years ago, when I began on this healing journey, I discovered that the paradigm or the way we think about health and obtaining health was off. When I trained in medical school, we got very little education about promoting health. There was great lip service given to it, but we really never learned the nitty-gritty of it. So over the last few years, I've developed the concept of the 5 pillars of health. As you can see behind me, we have the 5 areas we're going to discuss today. First, it's going to be putting in and putting on. Second, putting out, movement, sleep and rest, loving and being loved. I think with these 5 concepts in mind, anyone can begin on their road to health and well-being. So to begin with, putting in and putting on. Today, there is mass confusion about what is the right thing to eat. As you know, every couple weeks there's a new diet that comes out, and many people just are simply confused. They're tired, and even if they achieve some success, often it is not lasting. So in the first concept of putting in, putting on is the idea that we have to be very careful what we put into our bodies and what we put on our bodies. So let me begin with putting in. So in putting in, the concept is what is it that we are going to do that's going to nourish our bodies? As you know, there are many ways and places that we go and buy food and prepare food. It has been stated by many other doctors that are in integrative medicine that we should always focus on the outside of the marketplace when we go shopping. And that's because that's the place where most things are actually grown, they're not processed, and they're closer to the ground. So I would say that the first concept within putting in is that you want to always be as close to the earth and in its most raw state as possible. Because if you do that, you are more likely to achieve a state in which that food type has the most nutrition, the most vitamins, minerals, enzymes, which are proteins that actually help in digestion in the food. Can you believe it? The way food was made in its most natural state was that not only did it give you nutrition, but it also gave you a way of getting into your body. So I think that's very important. The second thing and there are many authors that have written about this, is a concept that you want to eat organic. Why? Because organic means that it has been freed of pesticides. Now, organic also tends to mean that you don't want anything that has been genetically modified. What's so bad about genetic modification? Well, the purpose behind genetic modification is that farmers decided to develop seeds that would resist drought, would resist different types of pests, would resist other things that would be destructive to the crop. But in so doing, they have fundamentally changed the architecture of the seed, which then became the plant, which then became the fruit that we consumed. Well, you would say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem is that the human body in the life of the existence of mankind was used to different food architecture, to put it in maybe in a simpler way. And so our body is not used to seeing these genetically modified seeds. And also, testing has never been done on these. The vast majority of the seeds we currently eat that are genetically modified. And so we believe that much of the diseases that we're now seeing in this new millennium has to do with genetic modification. So when you go shopping, not only do you want to look for organic, meaning that it's pesticide-free, toxin-free, hopefully, but also that it is non-GMO. Now, In webinars to be done in the future, I will also discuss uh, things to look for in particulars. What do I mean by that? Well, even though something could be not genetically modified and organic, if it was grown in an area where there were crops that maybe would cross react or pesticides that are still left in the ground, then those seeds that became plants that became then a fruit or a vegetable can be basically tampered with and can actually cause harm. So please always keep that in mind. The other thing is that most people don't know this, but grains. We're going to talk about grains now. So, in the concept of grains is that, so grains, we're talking about rice, we're talking about wheat, or we're talking about even some pseudo grains like quinoa. And what we have to realize is that most grains are inflammatory. So inflammation is not something good. Inflammation is potentially cancer causing, it is disease causing, whether we're talking about diseases of the digestive tract or even heart disease and many others, or brain disease. There's a famous neurologist named Dr. David Perlmutter, and he has written a great book called Grain Brain. And there he explains the dangers of eating grains and what it can do to the nervous system. So the reason I mention this is because grains in the past which come from grasses basically, are potentially damaging. And depending on your state of health, you may want to avoid grains. When we begin to talk about more specific disease entities, I'll be more specific about which grains you for sure want to avoid. But I would say that in general, you want to avoid grains for general health. As I mentioned it previously, the more raw the food is, the better it is. The more cooked it is, the less nutritious it becomes. So raw is always better. And finally, the last section within putting in has to do with what I call complements to nutrition. Most stores, whether we're talking about a grocery store, a pharmacy, or even a health food store, sells many supplements. And supplements should not be the core of our nutrition. The core of our nutrition should be the food that we consume. So supplements are simply there to complement what it is that we may be lacking in our diet. So please always remember that. If we lived in a near perfect world, and I always say that if you lived on the side of a mountain in Hawaii and you grew your own food and you raised your own chickens and your own cattle and it was all grass fed, then you probably would not need any kind of supplements or complements, right? You're getting everything from the ground, you're getting lots of vitamin D from the sun, and you're working the land, which means you're getting plenty of hard work and exercise. You're probably not going to be up on your iPad till midnight, and so, you know, and you're going to be very close to the ground, and there's actually healing energy that comes from the ground. You're going to be in a community of people. So all these things lend to health and nutrition, and really very little need for supplements, or as some people would call it, complementary medications. So the concept of putting on. In putting on, what we have seen over the last 20 to 30 years is that every day there's developed something that's going to make us look prettier, look younger, and smell better. More beautiful hair, maybe even the fact that we're going to look 10 to 20 years younger. Well, there's actually a cost to trying to achieve what I would say in some cases maybe an unnatural state. Not that we should not age with grace, but you have to be very careful what you choose to put on your body. There's a fantastic organization called the Environmental Working Group, and they have apps for the iPhone. They have a multitude of resources within their website that explains to you how good and pure almost anything that you can put on your body is. Let me give you some examples. If we look at shampoo, shampoo often has a multitude of chemicals that are actually very harmful to our bodies. It can affect our hormones. It can deplete us of nutrients. They can even be cancer causing in time. One of the more common things that I see that affects my practice is makeup, whether it's for men or for women. There are many ingredients within makeup or cosmeceuticals which are actually endocrine disruptors. What does that mean? That means that it can actually affect your hormone levels in your body and actually make it difficult for the doctor to manage or balance a woman or a man's hormone. And often, if the doctor is not aware of this, can often almost chase his tail trying to figure out what the heck is going on. It can also affect thyroid levels or thyroid function, and so it can really do tremendous harm. The other thing a lot of people don't think about is toothpaste. Most toothpaste today contains fluoride. And fluoride in itself, when it was first developed, was actually used as a rat poison. Not that I'm suggesting that the dental paste manufacturers are trying to kill us off, but certainly for many people, and especially the studies show that beyond your very early years of life, we really do not need any further fluoride. And fluoridated water is also something that is absolutely unnecessary and can actually be harmful. Just to give you a small example, fluoride can bind the thyroid receptor and therefore actually not allow thyroid hormone to work. And also it can displace iodine, and iodine is necessary for thyroid function. It can also actually be preventive for polycystic ovarian disease or breast cysts and even potentially breast cancer. So that's just a small example. So I would invite you all to look at the Environmental Working Group. Always look at anything that you put on your body. Look at the label. Look at those ingredients. If you can't pronounce what's in there, don't use it. Don't use it. And there's lots of resources nowadays that can give you lots of more pure and natural options, whether it's to clean your house, to wash your dishes, to do your laundry, and of course anything you put on your body, from shampoo, makeup, and things that make you nice and sweet smelling. So that is putting on. Now we're moving on to putting out. Now putting out refers to how do we eliminate things from our body. And elimination is a very important concept when it comes to health and well-being. I would say that one of the most common complaints that I have in my office, and maybe it's number one, is constipation. Constipation is huge. Whether you are a newborn infant or you're in your 80s and 90s, your bowel movements are critical, and it's one of those. There's something in medicine we call the review of systems. Where we're supposed to ask the patient, okay, what else is going on that maybe have nothing to do with why you're here today. And I would say that most patients have bowel issues. So a bowel movement, number one, is a sign of good health. And what is normal? Normal bowel movements are usually 2 to 3 per day. Okay, that's number one. Number two is if your bowels are significantly slow or too fast. You can also go to the bathroom too much. And that also is a sign of disease. It is not normal. It is not normal. And what is profoundly sad to me as a doctor is that there are many people out there that have been like this since they were little children. You ask them and they go, oh, I go, once every 2 or 3 days, and they, give it almost no importance. Like it's normal to me. Well, it may be normal or to you, but it is not normal, and it can actually be very harmful to you. And I'll explain why in a couple of minutes. So elimination through your bowels is number one. The second way that we put out is through sweat. Sweat is critical for the health and well-being of people. Now, sweating can either be from the form of exercise or from sitting in a sauna, particularly an infrared sauna, which helps to eliminate toxic chemicals from your body at a faster pace. Breathing. In Chinese medicine, that they often speak about different ways of breathing. Also, Ayurvedic medicine also talks about breathing exercises. It's part of the contemplative life. So breathing, not only does it eliminate toxins, carbon dioxide, but it also is part of a concept called mindfulness. Kind of being at peace or at one with yourself. Third is urination. Through urination, we eliminate, many waste products from our body. Obviously, to urinate, you have to drink lots of fluids. At a future webinar, we'll talk about the concept of drinking alkalinized water and its benefits to the human body. But I think that's also very important. So let's go back now to the importance of why having regular bowel movements is to health. I would tell you that when it comes to that, I always tell patients that before they enter any kind of detoxification program or a weight loss program or a general health and well-being program, that the number one thing we must do is get them to move their bowels. Because if they don't do that, if you understand the job of the liver and the gallbladder, they are processing centers for, probably the main processing center for how we get rid of and eliminate bad products from our body, toxic chemicals, etc., and so on. And if your liver and gallbladder and digestive tract are not working well, you actually accumulate those things. And that can often make you profoundly ill. And of course, that will dissuade you from, trying to do some other kind of detox or well-being program. You'll be very discouraged, and actually can cause significant harm. So I greatly encourage you to seek a practitioner that can help you with having regular bowel movements. So remember, adequate water intake for the urination, lots of exercise, or some type of sauna for sweat. And then slow and deep breaths, maybe as part of your meditation program. Now we'll move on to movement, number 3. Here, what I'm talking about is that, I'm always surprised when I ask patients, do they exercise? What do they do on a daily basis? Most patients are very sedentary. They sit a great part of their day and they really get very little movement or motion in their lives. The reason why this is critical is because the number one powerhouse of the body is this little bean-shaped organelle within each of our cells called the mitochondria. I think you will find that in the next 5 to 10 years, there is a tremendous amount of research that is going to be placed on the laps of physicians to help us deal with all kinds of mitochondrial problems. So mitochondria is the main place within the cell where energy is made in the form of something called ATP. So that if you lack ATP, you will not have energy, you will be very achy, you'll be very fatigued, your brain will not work well, you will be impotent. It affects everything. And so the amount of ATP is reflected by the health and well-being and the number of mitochondria. So guess what? What do you think is the number one way of increasing mitochondria? Movement, exercise. So the problem here is that there is so much confusion about, okay, which is the best exercise? Recently, there was an article showing that if we exercise more than 3 hours a week, it actually increases sickness and shortens lifespan. How does that make sense? Well, I think what we found is that what works best to improve the number and the health of mitochondria is actually weight-bearing exercise, not so much aerobic exercise. Not that we shouldn't do anything aerobic, but weightlifting, and particularly a concept called circuit training, which basically gets you to do weights at a fast enough pace with little rest. That seems to work the heart and the muscle at an ideal pace. My recommendation when you exercise is that you do about 40 minutes of weights and 20 minutes of aerobics, always starting with the weights first. How often should you exercise? The research is kind of all over on this, but I would say you want to get in at least about 3 hours of exercise a week. Now, you could split it up. I mean, sometimes if you do a really good interval training workout, 20 minutes a day is enough. I would probably do it 5 days a week. If you like to go slower and do more slower weights, then you probably want to get in about 40 minutes of that with about 20 minutes aerobics, and you want to do that 4 to 5 times a week. There's a newer concept called Burst Fit, and there's actually a website on that which describes, again, almost a circuit training type of thing where you are. So let's take running for instance. So that in Burst Fit type running, you're basically sprinting, let's say for 30 seconds, and you're resting for 15. Then sprinting again and resting. And we actually, if you have a son or daughter that's in track, that's actually one of the exercises that you do. And there's actually a way of running marathons that takes that concept into line. But that, I think, is an excellent way of achieving and maintaining health, increasing mitochondrial function, increasing energy. And in essence, this is a priming of the pump. If you want to achieve wellness, you cannot do it without exercise. When you look at many longevity studies, they would tell you that there are 2 ways to live a long life. It's either to exercise on a regular basis or to calorically restrict your diet, which means that you eat about 30% less. Okay? So I think if we keep those concepts in mind, again, putting in, putting on, putting out, and now movement, that sets up the basis for long-term health. In the next section, we're going to discuss sleep and rest. I would tell you that as a clinician, sleeping issues, insomnia, is one of the most difficult things to treat or take care of. And often it begins with sleep hygiene. What do I mean by that? Sleep hygiene, the concept is, what are the things that you need to do if you are going to sleep well, if you have a good night's rest? Well, I think one of the most critical ones is that wherever you sleep, let that be a place of sleep only. Obviously, there could be some entertainment, but we're not talking about the TV or the iPad type. So, but you want it to be a place of rest, a place of intimacy, not a place of visual entertainment. Again, from a TV to an iPad to a computer screen. Why is that? Believe it or not, as the way man was made was that when nighttime comes, we're supposed to release a hormone called melatonin. Well, since the advent of the iPad and the computer or the TV, what we often have is something bright that is in front of our faces, which gets recorded in the back of our eyes. Well, that brightness, if for long enough and intense enough, what it will do, it will shut down the production of melatonin. Guess what happens? Melatonin doesn't actively cause you to go to sleep. It kind of passively lets you go to sleep. So you lose that trigger to go to sleep. And when that happens, obviously, you don't fall asleep. Or if you fall asleep, it's not a restful kind of sleep. It's often restless, and sometimes you're getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning. One of the dangerous things that I find many patients doing is that they hear this natural product called melatonin. So again, they're staying up till midnight with their iPad or watching something on the tube. Then they're deciding to take a 5 to 10 milligram melatonin pill. Well, our body naturally does not release 5 to 10 milligrams of melatonin. And most it releases less than a milligram to about maybe a milligram of melatonin at bedtime. So you are way, way overdosing. So initially it may work, but then many patients say it stops working. So the reason why it stops working is because you're doing something to your body that is not natural. Okay? So always remember, let's try and restore our bodies to their most natural state. So that means that you want a room that it is pitch dark when you're ready to go to sleep. So if you want to watch TV, whatever, do it somewhere else. Do it for about an hour before you're ready to go to sleep, and then go to bed. Once in bed, again, everything should be as dark as possible. Try not have anything that has an LED light with that red light or even a green light, because that again can be stimulating to our bodies, and again keep us awake and not being able to fall asleep. Also, there are people out there that are very sensitive to electromagnetic fields. So even your phone, if your phone is on in your room, turn it off, because that again can be stimulating to your body and not allow you to have a restful night's rest. Recently, I came across the concept of earthing, and let me explain to you briefly. So the idea is that the way we were made was that we were always supposed to be one with the ground, and the ground is full of electrons. Our bodies, particularly as we produce waste products, those waste products are usually positively charged, so that if we're walking throughout our day barefooted, we would be discharging these positive ions, and the electrons are coming into our bodies and they're kind of neutralizing and almost, you can say, detoxing your body. Well, since the advent of the shoe, we've lost that ability. The other part of our lives, which was designed to be in touch with the ground, was sleep. Of course, none of us sleep on the ground anymore unless we're in a lot of trouble and we get sent out to the doghouse. Unless that's happened in your life, and I'm really sorry if that's happened, you're not getting, again, that energizing, healing process going on. So the concept of earthing came up, has been developed. And basically you can earth by being barefoot on the ground for at least 30 minutes a day, or you can buy mats or sheets that you can put on your bed at night that are grounded, and again release all those electrons. I will tell you, for the patients that have tried it, they feel amazing. I particularly use it for patients who have any kind of adrenal issues. It seems to help in the restoration of the adrenal glands. And one of the most important things for adrenal restoration is sleep, good quality sleep. And most of us do not get good quality sleep. So if you're interested, earthing.com is a website. I highly recommend it. It has been life-changing for many of my patients, particularly insomnia, particularly if you have a partner who snores. Often snoring completely resolves just with that. I'm not sure how it works, but I've heard many stories where it does resolve. Another question that I'm asked about is, what about how much sleep should we be getting at night? I would say that the research shows that the average amount of sleep is about 7 hours per night of good, sound sleep. One of the amazing things that happens during sleep is that we have what's called resolution of memories. So if you've ever experienced, when you wake up in the morning, you've been trying to work on a project or something the night before, the day before, and you just couldn't figure it out, and all of a sudden in the morning you wake up and go, have that aha moment, that's resolution of memories. And that occurs during the latter parts of sleep, of your sleep time and the sleep cycles. So if you're not getting that 6th to 7th hour of sleep, that's not occurring, and you're not completely restoring your body. So I highly encourage you to try and achieve 7 hours of sleep. And, the Motel 8 doesn't always help. One last thing regarding sleep is that, let's say that you're only sleeping 5 to 6 hours at night, and you try and get that to 7 hours, and you just can't do it. Your body just wakes up early, or you still have restless sleep. What I would recommend is that instead of going to bed at the same time and trying to sleep later, I would recommend over a few days going to bed at 15-minute intervals earlier. And then over a few weeks, you should be able to get to the 7 hours of sleep. I would always avoid, Benadryl, alcohol, any of those artificial things to try and get you sleep, because yes, you may sleep, but it is not restorative sleep. And that's the other thing too. Most people think about sleep as rest, but sleep is actually a very active process. There's a tremendous amount of healing that's going on. I often compare it to what happens at Disney World in the middle of the night. As you know, there's ground crews that are going on all around the theme parks and restoring, fixing things that during the day, because everyone's kind of busy, they can't do. Well, that's what's going on in your body. So if you don't have that good sleep, that's not happening. Associated with sleep is the concept of rest, and I think this is critical. You know, we live in a society that is 7 days a week, on, go, 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 24 hours a day, beepers. Well, we don't have beepers anymore. We just have cell phones that work like beepers, and just a highly, highly demanding life. The human person was not designed that way. The human person was designed to rest, to rest. And so so that's where you can be creative. I would say walk. If you are a prayerful person, I often tell people, if you don't have time to pray, you don't have time to walk. Walk and pray at the same time. If you say you never get to talk to your spouse, walk with your spouse. So that's more a leisure, resting thing. Although it's somewhat active, I think it's still restful. At least it's restful for the body. It's restful for the mind. Days at the beach. I think the beach is a profoundly healing place. I don't think the pool is, because of the chlorine in the pool. Chlorine, remember, can be very disruptive to many hormones in your body. So I would say if you have a choice, go to the beach. Take your shoes off, go on the grass. Be barefoot, be crazy. Play with your kids. Do things outside of the hustle and bustle of your day to restore your body. And take vacations. At the end of your life, you'll never be questioned about whether you work too much. It's often going to be, the questions you're going to have inside your heart are, did I spend enough time with my kids? Did I spend enough time with my loved ones? And those are the things that you cannot replace. Even if it means that a promotion may be delayed, I think in the long run, you'll be a better and more whole person by resting. Finally, the 5 pillars of health, we will finish with loving and being loved. I think that this is a very powerful section, and the reason why I place this is that one of the things that I have found in this journey of healing within myself, but also in helping others, is that when patients are often stuck, what does that mean? When I have a hard time figuring out, why is this person not better? Why is their disease not improving? Why are they still so tired? Why are they still, just lifeless? It's usually because I've not paid enough attention to the last section, loving and being loved. I would tell you that the concept of love is essential in life, and the active practice of self-giving is critical to the maturation of all human beings. Being loved is critical because we need to feel that we are important, that we are real, that we are valuable to others and to society. There is a great book and concept called The 5 Love Languages by a gentleman named Gary Chapman. And I mention that because, to give you an example, there are many husbands and wives out there which wake up one day and realize that there's no love anymore in their relationship. Yet maybe they spend 15, 20, even 30 years together. And I often wondered, well, how the heck is that? How can someone be with another person in a committed relationship for so many years and yet feel like one day all of a sudden they're not in love anymore? Well, let me give you 2 responses to that question. Number 1, love is a choice. Love is a choice. That means that we must always choose to love. If love to you only is a feeling, that feeling goes away. And if you read the work of Gary Chapman, he'll clearly describe, discuss, and illustrate that. So feeling can never be love can never be a feeling. Love must always be a choice. The second part is we have this thing called the love tanks, okay? And each of us has a different language of love. The 5 love languages as described by Mr. Chapman is affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. The example I wanted to give you guys earlier was you take Betty Sue and Jimmy John. So Betty Sue was someone whose love language was an act of service. Jimmy John's love language, his primary love language was affirmation. So here we have Jimmy John, who constantly is telling his wife how great she is, how wonderful she is, a great mom, a great cook. But yet, when it comes to helping her out around the house, he really never does that. He really never takes the time to maybe do something that she would want him to offer to do. And then if he ever does, he never really does it the way she wants it done. He does it the way he thinks would be best. On the other hand, his wife chooses to always help him around the house or help him with a project here and there, but rarely does she ever affirm him. Well, here you have a couple in a committed relationship whose love tanks are completely empty. Even though each of them thinks that they're doing many acts of kindness and love for the other, but they're simply not speaking the same language. So you're blessed if you have a spouse who has your same love language, but if you don't, it often feels awkward to you to speak that language. But because you are choosing an act of love, you're going to choose to learn about your partner's love language. And guess what happens? Let's say you are in a terrible relationship, but I will bet you any amount of money that the moment you learn about this concept and you begin to fill the other's love tank, that other person is going to be far more willing to fill your love tank because they're going to want to know what's different here. So I think that's where the concept of the 5 love languages is critical. The other concept of love and being loved is the idea of forgiveness. Many years ago, I attended a conference on forgiveness. And what I found was, through this healer, was that one of the greatest causes of cancer was unforgiveness. And this is critical. Now, at the cellular level, I don't think any of us really have a great understanding of it, but I can tell you as a practitioner that the concept of forgiveness is critical. This is the way I explain it to couples. Make believe that you are in a dance and tie a rope around each person. So anytime that you want to move in this dance, you're going to basically pull the other person. So no matter what that other person is doing, you are always tied to them. You are not free. And people that are free are stuck. And if you're stuck, it will lead to disease. Okay? So please always remember that you want to be as free as you can be in life. And the way you begin to do that, it's forgiveness. Now, sometimes forgiveness is difficult when it is yourself that you have to forgive. In the world of infertility, I often have women who have undergone an abortion previously. And I will tell you that one of the most difficult things that those women go through, whether they realize it or not, is the concept of forgiving themselves. Sometimes also the other thing that I see are women or men who've been abused sexually or physically as children. So I think that this is, the most difficult part of the healing journey for many of my patients. Often I'm referring obviously to psychologists or even psychiatrists at times, or some other type of mental health counselor. But these are things that if you do not deal with, it will forever keep you stuck and not keep you from healing. The last two concepts I want to leave you with in the loving and being loved section is the concept of laughter and hugging. Believe it or not, hugging releases tremendous amounts of endorphins. It is very healing. It is probably one of the number one things I love to do with all my patients if they're receptive to it. And I just think that it is great medicine. So hug, hug, hug. The last thing is laughter. I think we need to always have a great sense of humor. Life is difficult, so we need to laugh. Sometimes I think the number one person we need to laugh at is ourselves, for the times we screw up, our shortcomings. What I think determines wellness ultimately is not where you're at, but the idea that you're always going to get up from wherever you are on the ground and continue to fight. The sign of a great fighter is not the fact that he never got hit, but the fact that anytime he got hit and got knocked down, he decided to stand up. So with this, we will end the section on loving and being loved. So I want to, again, just in summary, the 5 pillars of health: putting in, putting on. So always be cognizant of everything you put in your mouth. Make sure that it is as close to the ground as possible. Make sure that it is GMO free, organic, and also, which I didn't mention earlier, was always think about not necessarily what you're buying, particularly when it's an animal-based product, but what is that animal eating? Because if the animal is eating grain, you're eating grain. Remember what I said about grain before. So you want the animal to have lived in its most natural state. Putting on, I mentioned the environmental working group. Always be cognizant of anything you put on your body. If it has a bunch of things in it that you don't understand, you probably want to stay away from it. Putting out was talking about elimination. Make sure that you are going to the bathroom enough times, both to urinate and also to defecate. Also, make sure that you are sweating a lot and that you always remember to breathe deep, breathe often. Going on to movement. Exercise is critical. Look into the concept of burst fitness or interval training. Don't forget about weights. Weights is, I think, superior to aerobic exercise. Make sure you do it regularly. And make sure that you enjoy it. I think that's one of the most important things. In my own life, I love to play racquetball. I would get up any day at 5:30 in the morning to play racquetball. You want me to go do something else, I may have a hard time doing it. So find something you love to do and do it with someone that you love doing it with. That creates accountability. So often I'll get up because I don't want to disappoint the person I'm supposed to meet for that workout routine. So I think that is extremely helpful. Going on to sleep and rest, I think this is probably the one that we least pay attention to on a regular day basis. But if you don't sleep, you don't heal. If you don't rest, you don't have joy in your life. And then finally, loving and being loved. I think there's a great little book on titled Random Acts of Kindness. I will tell you that when I have a deeply depressed patient, the one thing I want them to do, other than the exercise, is to do something for someone else. It's been amazing how many times people get out of this depressed state of self by helping somebody else. We need to love, and remember, love is a choice, it is not a feeling. Please read up on Mr. Gary Chapman and his book on the 5 love languages. It's fantastic. Look within your heart and your mind and your spirit about the whole concept of forgiveness. And then I actually, one of the things that I've actually forgot to speak about within loving and being loved is the concept of spirituality. I think that having a sense of God in your life, having someone greater than you in your life is critical to your growing up as a human person. I think that it will keep you humble. I think the greatest tragedy is pride that will actually keep you from being the man or the woman you were designed to be. And you can't do that without a sense of God in your life. If you don't go to church, start going to church if you are of the Christian background. Whatever you do, find God and you will find your way. I know that I often strongly recommend to my patients to go back to church. If they're Catholic, I recommend that they go to confession. It is just a great way of finding healing and wholeness. And remember that our body is mind, body, and spirit. I'm telling you, as a clinician for 20 years now, there are many, many times where spiritual voids cause physical illness. So please don't ever forget that. Again, that might be one of those little hidden gems that you find in your own healing journey. And in a future interview, I will discuss at great length how I think spirituality fits into the 5 pillars of health in an even more powerful way. But suffice it to say that give God the credit, turn to God for the things that you can't figure out, and let that be a part of a community. I mentioned previously, and with this I'll close, that the things that help you to live a long life, I mentioned exercise, I mentioned caloric restriction. But you know what the number one thing is? Being part of a community. They've done studies where they call blue zones, which are areas around the world that have the people that live the longest period of life. And what they find that the one common thread is that they are in a strongly, tightly bound community. So if you want to be a monk, nothing wrong with that, but you'll live a shorter life. You want to live within community. And even monks live within a community. So what I'm saying to you is don't live in isolation. Always have friends, seek friends, and be in healthy relationships. And with that, I want to close. Thank you for your time, and I'm honored to do this for you.